Welcome in, everybody, to a Monday morning edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports, wrapping up the 2025 NFL Draft. 10 new Philadelphia Eagles plus a litany of undrafted free agents. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Monday morning, brother, after a long couple days of work?
Woo! Yeah, still recovering. Big day for the Eagles going down to the White House later this afternoon. They'll be honored there at about 4:00 on the South Lawn. And yeah, very close to the draft. So I got to be here and do a draft show, post-draft show.
Yeah, well,
people are fired up because the volume, baby.
Yeah,
I love it. We're doing.
Well, I got some different takeaways. I'm fired up, but I'm not. We got some things to talk about for sure, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about those things. You mentioned the White House visit, so the Eagles will do that later on today. I guess when you're dealing with the White House and a football team and all the players, you got to kind of take it when you can. But April 28th, though, a couple days after the NFL draft, I think there would have been a better time. But I digress on that. So we'll see what they do with that. Real quick, I do want to get a kick out of. I'll bring up Saquon Barkley because everybody seems to have their panties in a bind that he's riding on Air Force One. I'm like, hey, I would ride on Air Force One. I don't care who it was.
I don't care who the price. If I'm getting I said to you before that if they want to come after Birds 365 with Air Force One, I'll go down. Go down.
Marine One can drop right on the McMullen lawn, baby, and pick you up and take you to the White House. But I did get a kick out of it because a couple months or weeks
golfing with Obama.
Yeah, right. So piss off one side with Obama and then go to the other side, ride around with Trump. So I like Saquon Barkley doing that. Good for him. So they'll be down there at the White House. Johnny Mac, what's your first thoughts, man, here on this Monday to the NFL draft? 10 new players, a bunch of undrafted free agents. We talked about the picks as they came. But just kind of as you sat here now for the last couple of days, what are your thoughts on the Eagles draft and what they were able to accomplish this year?
I thought it was because we were doing it obviously as it happened, but I think, you had that palpable feeling that everybody was disappointed because of what I was talking about, the lack of volume through day two. And all of a sudden everybody's fired up because there's a bunch of guys in day three. It's all about the volume, but from the standpoint of, what was accomplished, I think they got tremendous upside in the first round. That's what you're looking for so late in the first round, starting at 32, ending up at 31. They were trying to trade up in day two. Still don't know for who, but do know they were trying to trade up, ended up taking Andrew Mukuba at 64 overall. Very athletic, undersized, space-eating safety, and then a bunch of guys on day three. I thought it was interesting how he explained the philosophy. Day one, you're looking for difference makers. Day two, you're looking for good. Second round, you're looking for good starters, and even the third round as well. They didn't have a third round pick, and then Day three, you're looking for guys with that upside to become starters down the road. So he's talking a lot about traits, which we knew, but I like when he verbalizes this stuff so the fans can hear it. And they try to identify, all right, this guy's got this, and if we can work on some of the deficiencies, he can turn into a valuable starting level player. That's kind of their philosophy on the third day. But obviously on the third day, you're dealing with prospects that have deficiencies, and that's why they're on the third day.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff there, John. A couple of my qualms, all right, and we'll get into some of the good stuff as well. I like the Jihaad Campbell pick. I love the Ty Robinson pick. He's probably one of my favorite picks in the NFL draft. We'll talk about the questions that will come up from some of these picks. Tyler Steen doesn't look like they drafted a guy who, still looks like it's his job to lose. Jordan Davis, Sidney Brown. We'll talk about some of the ramifications of the draft. Here are my qualms. I want you to tell me what you think of them. All right. My first qualm is you only got 2 picks in the first 3 rounds. And I think they've been so damn successful in the first 3 rounds recently. I would have liked to take another pick there. I understand you were at the back of the 3rd round. They traded from 96. I think it was to 101, and then they traded out again once that tackle got taken, but no, I have no way to confirm that. So that's my qualm number 1. I would have liked another pick in the top 3 rounds just because I think they've been so successful there. My second qualm is there's a lot of undersized guys. I mean, we talked about this before going into the draft. Andrew Mukuba is a smaller dude. Jihaad Campbell, if he's going to play the edge, is a smaller dude. I don't know if that's going to be a big thing. They're clearly betting on athleticism and high ceiling players and not worried about that. And then my third qualm would be no tight end. I mean, even if you bring Goddard back this year, are we going to have the same situation next year that we're in right now where, if Goddard's gone, you don't have a guy in the room. So I would have liked a tight end, even if it was a developmental tight end later in the rounds. But those are the 3 things that I look at and maybe would have done differently. But overall, I think it was a pretty good weekend. Now, what do you think of those?
I mean, I should have mentioned they tried to trade up as well in day 3. So again, sometimes you can't get, I think the assumption is way too often I say, well, you should trade up, you should do this, you need 2 sides. There's the other side.
Right.
And remember the Eagles, because they won the Super Bowl, which is a very good thing. They're starting at a lower position, which is a very bad thing. So, it's not as much ammunition. It's not as valuable as higher picks in that round. So it becomes more difficult just from that standpoint. And I think that was a lot of people asked Howie a couple times about other GMs being hesitant to trade with him because of his reputation. And he smacked it down on 2 different occasions and basically pointed to, look, we didn't have as valuable of assets as teams that are higher up on the draft board. And he was very, he said he saw no difference. Basically, it's pretty straightforward. Do you want to trade? Do you not want to trade?
Right.
So I think a lot of people misunderstand that part of it, just that he should have traded up. He was trying to trade up in both the 2nd round and the 3rd round.
Yeah, right. And obviously it has to work out on every side.
Yeah. And so ultimately they go back and I mean, there's always when you trade back from your position, whether it's no matter what round, you're not comfortable with who's on that board at that position. So a lot of people figure, were they going to take Shedeur Sanders? I don't know. Cleveland thought they were going to take him. I know that. I know there's a bunch of people around the NFL who thought they were going to take him at that point.
Right.
Does that mean it's true? No, because the Eagles certainly, I got no concrete. In fact, anything they kind of pushed back on it, but tilting towards no, they weren't going to do it. But they are in people's heads at times like that. And others certainly thought they were going to do it. So ultimately, and they didn't trade down from there, Now, there's also the position 145 is when they took Mac McWilliams, the cornerback from Central Florida. They didn't trade down. So maybe that is the guy they wanted at that particular. It's certainly plausible at the bare minimum. Or the other potentials, they couldn't trade down. They wanted to trade down at that point. They couldn't trade down. So that's potential as well.
Any truth in your opinion to people boxing out Howie Roseman? That's the latest talk amongst the fans.
Well, that's what
Howie out nowadays because of all the
Well,
good
that's what I said.
publicity.
He was asked that on 2 different occasions, and he said nope, didn't get any feeling like that. But when I always say, one of the amazing things about the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles was that I said all the time that Vic Fangio and Saquon Barkley specifically not only lived up to their reputation, they exceeded it, because people, blow human beings up like they're infallible, especially people they like.
Right.
And it's very hard to live up to the reputation. And Howie's got now this reputation of he can do no wrong and this and that. And, so when something happens, the assumption defaults to, oh, they're boxing him out. Well, all I can say is he said, no, that's not the case on 2 different occasions. And, he was trying to trade up in the second round, trying to trade up in the third round. Couldn't do it. I think it has more to do with starting at 32 and 64 in 96
Yeah,
than
we won
anything
a
else.
Super Bowl. We because of that, you don't get a favorable draft position. That's how it works. But
Yeah.
no, yeah. So what do you think of John? Let's go to Mukuba. All right, we talked a lot about Jihaad Campbell. Obviously, Mukuba was the Friday night pick on day 2, so we haven't had a Birds 365 since that point. What do you think of the Andrew Mukuba pick? I was going back and forth with a couple of the people in the chat. A lot of people telling me they love him. A lot of people telling me, hey, he's undersized. I'm in the middle right now where I'm like, I see the undersized issue. He is a small dude. I mean, I saw the pictures you guys posted up of him at the facility, and I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty small safety. Now, he does have a good knack for playing the game, so I'm not saying he's not going to be a good player, but what is your perspective on the Andrew Mukuba pick? And remember, there were a couple other safeties still on the board when they took Mukuba. They had Kevin Winston, they had Xavier Watts, so a couple other options there, and they went with Mukuba.
Yeah, I'm not in love with the pick, and I'd rather have Xavier Watts at that position, but he ended up going in the 90s. I just think he's a ball hawk. He's smart. He's played a lot of football. That might hurt. That might hurt his projection in the Eagles' minds, because they don't like older rookies. But for what they wanted, for Howie's explanation of what they wanted, and it was about traits, and it's a traits draft, and he's faster and more of a space eater. So for what they wanted, he makes more sense. The question is, do you agree with what they wanted? My biggest concern with the size is the way he plays in a different way. I always talk about Dallas Goedert. All Eagles fans think he's injury prone. And to a certain degree, he's not to a certain degree, he's missed a bunch of games over the years. Part of that is because of how physical he plays. And, when he broke his forearm, he's trying to win Kyle Bryant's Angry Run Award and trying to bowl over people. You saw it against Green Bay. Did the same thing. Didn't get hurt on that play. And Dallas, where it differs is Dallas has great size for his position. But I see a similar mentality for Mukuba. He's very physical, but he doesn't have the body to be that physical. If you understand what I'm saying. So if he's trying to take on NFL running backs and like he did at Texas,
Yeah,
I don't know how that's going to work out.
yeah. He's going to earn himself that paper mache tag if he goes up against the wrong dude too many times, is what you're saying.
Well, and that's my point. He's not injury prone. There's no evidence he's injury prone, but he plays sort of he plays a lot like Sidney Brown without Sidney Brown's speed. Excuse me, size.
Yeah.
He plays sort of that reckless, missile type mentality, but he doesn't have the size for it. That's my concern with him. Athleticism wise, he's off the charts, and clearly that's going to be a trend throughout this draft with the Eagles, as you'll see. The only guy who didn't have top tier traits was the last guy. Well, the last 2 guys, I should say, Cameron Williams, and then you're talking 6th-round pick, and even he has the trait of size. I'm talking athleticism. And Antoine Powell-Ryland.
Yeah, I like that pick. I know you're not as high on him. I like that pick, man.
Well, he's just not he's not.
Yeah, he doesn't have the traits, and traits was a big part of this draft. They did bet on traits a lot of way through.
Yeah. So, people get excited by him because of the college production, but he doesn't fit in with the traits aspect of the draft.
Right.
So, the entire draft, they went with super athletic guys. up to that point. And then by that point, you're probably out of them. So you try to do the best you can. But so yeah, I mean, Mukuba's, fine, solid pick. I don't like rating picks, but
Yeah. What do you think it means for Sidney Brown?
He's the classic B. I don't think it means anything for Sidney Brown. Sidney Brown's going to get the opportunity to start. I think Sidney Brown's going to be day one of training camp. He's going to be the starting safety. It's up to him to win the job, and it's up to Mukuba to push him. That's what I think the goal is.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about that. The only thing I would say is, man, they've been the second round picks that have come out of the draft for the Eagles in the last couple of years. I mean, you got Jalen Hurts, Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson. Last year, you had Cooper DeJean. Like, if you're just going off the trend, you're like, Andrew Mukuba is going to be a starter here in Philly. So I don't know if maybe, hey, is it possible in the future you have a Sidney Brown, Andrew Mukuba tandem emerge? Maybe not this year, but down the line at safety?
Yeah, it's possible. I don't see, Reed Blankenship slowing down, though. I mean, he's still young, so
I don't
we'll
either,
see.
but are they going to pay him the 10 mil or whatever it would be?
Well, I think they're going to try to get him extended pretty soon, so we'll see how that works out. But and I don't know what that's going to look like, because he's an interesting negotiation, because he's wasn't drafted, but he's playing well. So
Right.
very similar to TJ Edwards back in the day. Yeah, how high do you go? But if you're able to get him for a cost-effective rate, he might be, he might get 3-4 year extension. So we'll see how that works out. But to your point about second round picks, like Landon Dickerson and Cooper DeJean specifically, I think Landon was 37,
Right.
and I think Cooper was 40. I know that. But they were also both considered first round picks. Had they not gotten injured, in the case of Landon, it was significant. Like, Landon was a first round pick, but
Yeah.
he tore his ACL in the SEC championship game. And he ended up going 37th anyway. I mean, if he was healthy, he would have been early 20s, I'd say. And Cooper, a lot of people had the Eagles picking him at 22 if Quinyon wasn't there. I mean, he had some injury. People were concerned. Not as serious as Landon, but there's a big difference between 37 and 40 and 64. And even if you start talking about Jalen was 53, I think. Cam was 51. You're going up the board.
Yeah. It all depends on the board each year, too. Like this year, it was kind of talked about the 20 to 50 were all in that same range. So maybe there was a little bit of a drop off there. The other thing is, that I noticed in this draft, and we're going to talk about the day 3 picks as well. We'll even give you guys the update on the undrafted guys. Obviously, we want to make sure Birds 365 community knows everything that went on with the Eagles. I think right now there was, I want to say 8 or 9 undrafted free agents. I think I saw reportedly signed with the Eagles, and then a couple others got invited to camp. So we'll run down those names as well. But John, the other thing and obviously you brought up how it takes 2 to tango, but it didn't seem like Howie was willing to pay a huge price in this draft to move up in the first, second, or third round. He stayed pat at, moved up one spot in the first, stayed pat in the second, and traded out in the third. So maybe the partner wasn't there, or maybe the asking price was too high. So it did seem like Howie was, he didn't have any big trades other than a couple move backs and a couple shake and bakes where he added a bunch of picks, but it was no big trade or anything like that. No, didn't bring in a veteran. None of that happened in this draft.
No, but as he always says on day 3 afterwards, talent acquisition season isn't over for the Philadelphia Eagles. So, I mean, Howie's proven himself over the years. He will bring people in May and June, even before training camp in July. And if they get to training camp and they don't like what they see, they will, bring in people late, as you saw with, CJ Gardner-Johnson most recently. But even if you want to go back to Ronald Darby or somebody like that during the Super Bowl 52 season, that was an August edition. So It's not over, but the main part of it is over,
Right.
of talent acquisition season.
Yeah. Still plenty of time to get players. You can think about Mekhi Becton. You can think about the cornerbacks we've gotten in the past. James Bradbury. Remember Steven Nelson? We got him like late in the year. So still plenty of time to get some of the players. John, let's move into day 3. Before I go into each individual player, I'll ask what you think of overall on day 3. Here's what I liked about day 3. I thought for the most part, every pick was a worthwhile shot in the, you're taking shots at that point. Obviously, some player, you're betting on traits, but I thought every player for different reasons specific to each player, I thought they were good shots in the dark on day 3. I love the Ty Robinson pick. McWilliams, I like. We'll see what kind of upside he has. I even like APR, Antoine Powell Riley. I know you've said he doesn't have the traits, but shoot, you're in the 6th round and he's got 16 sacks last year, 25 and a half in 2 years. I'll take the shot on the dark on him. So I like the Cameron Williams, the offensive lineman. I thought overall they made good shots in day 3. What did you think of day 3?
Yeah, I like day 3, specifically for Ty Robinson, Smile Munden, and Drew Kendall and Kyle McCord. I think those 4 guys are legitimate potential NFL starters down the road, not early, not day 1. Now the problem from an Eagles perspective, they don't need a center for a long time, hopefully. And they don't need a quarterback for a long time, hopefully. So that might end up being other places down the road. But I'm just talking about the players. I think they have legitimate shots to be NFL starting level players. So I think, Howie kind of explained it. Yeah, 8 picks on day 3. If you got 3 starters out of that, you're cooking with gas. And I think ultimately in history, we'll say they got 3 starters. Again, I don't know if it's going to be here, but from a personnel depth, that's how they kind of grade themselves. Are these NFL players? Did they become NFL players, contributing players, starting players? And I think they did a good job on day 3 identifying those traits. With Munden, it's speed. With Kendall, it's savviness. You talk about his genetics, his dad, and he's just a natural center. And I thought it was interesting that Howie pointed out it's a center deficient league because it's not a natural trait. People can't snap the football, and too often other teams are, going in and say, well, we'll move this guy to center, more than having a center. And I think Drew Kendall's a natural center. With Kyle McCord, it's processing. And Ty Robinson, I mean, he's not going to fail for a lack of effort, lack of athleticism, just an impressive person. Who's pre-med playing football at that level?
I know, man.
Taking 19 credits. I mean, everything points in a positive direction with Ty Robinson. So those are the guys I like the most. There's also, Miles Hinton, whose dad is Chris Hinton, for those who don't know. Those, one of the greatest offensive linemen I've ever seen.
Big Sills knows Chris Hinton. He's supposed to be getting him on the show this week, his dad. So that should be good.
He's phenomenal. Well, he was phenomenal, Chris Hinton. But, his son hasn't, I think Chris might have been the number 4 overall pick way back in the day. That's how good he was. That's Lane Johnson territory. Obviously his son hasn't lived up to that in the college. He went to Stanford, very smart kid though. Went to Stanford and Michigan. And he's got his father's traits. And if Jeff Stoutland can tap into that, he could be a big time player as well. So I thought they took a lot of worthy shots on day 3, but I kind of grade it differently than than most people. Like, I'm not looking for day one starters. We talked about it last
Yeah,
year
right.
with the 5th round picks, and certainly not on this team. And again, you could tell with specifically 168 with Kendall and 181 with McCord, you could tell the Eagles were just taking the best players on their boards because they don't need those positions.
Yeah, they did get a bunch of offensive linemen. They signed a couple on the undrafted as well. So man, there's a lot of offensive linemen. Jeff Dowlin's got a big group to work with, John, coming into camp this year.
Yeah, well, you always need. I mean, 90 guys. Understand, you always need a bunch of
Right.
offensive linemen. You always need a bunch of speed people, wide receivers, cornerbacks, so and things like that. But yeah, I thought, and as I said, people just get excited by volume because they talk themselves into that. Like Smile Munden, linebacker, Georgia. People get excited by that.
Right.
But he's another guy I think is a worthy pick, as a athletic linebacker. And if you think about what's going on in all-ball linebacker, Nakobe Dean, there's a bunch of different options, and 2 of them are he continues to be injury prone. That's a bad one, obviously. And or good in the short term, he continues to play at a high level, gets healthy, plays like he did last year, and then prices himself out of where the Eagles want to go. So you might have to start thinking about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Or now you have another guy, Smile Munden, and that's how it's pronounced, by the way, Smile. So now you have 2 guys. Maybe one of them hits. Same thing when you talk about right tackle. Maybe it's Miles Hinton. Maybe it's Cam Williams.
Yeah, right.
That
Nick Sirianni competition. There you go. That's what you're getting a lot of that here. Smile Munden's a true off-ball linebacker, so he could be a potential.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
for all, well, I mean, there's certain people that aren't going to believe that Jihaad Campbell's not an all-ball linebacker until they see it in Philadelphia. But
I'm already seeing that everywhere. Everybody wants him to be an off-ball linebacker. I mean, I don't think Howie used the 31 overall pick on an off-ball linebacker after paying.
Well, he freaking said it. I mean, listen to him. Don't listen to me.
People will say to that, "Oh, now you're just going to take Howie at his word," and I get that. You can't always buy into what the team is telling you, but
I'll say that you can take Howie at his word. In that instance, not saying he doesn't play games in other instances, but in that instance, he was very clear how he evaluates the player. Now, Vic might get him and do something. If you want to hope, your hope is Vic Fangio. And Vic, but I would say this to be wary about that, because Vic was much more involved in the draft process this year than last year. So Vic's probably on board with, for a lack of a better term, the Andrew Van Ginkel projection of Jihaad Campbell.
All right, so if you had fun this NFL draft, everybody watching the Eagles take 10 players, you better set your clocks for next year, because they got 3 third-round picks. All right, they got 2 fourth-round picks. They got 4 fifth-round picks and a 7th. They got a 1, a 2, 3 thirds. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 picks in next year's draft as it stands today. So they're loaded up for next year in the NFL draft. So we'll talk about, we'll see what happens next year. And if they use any of those picks to be able to shake and bake, maybe move up, make a trade, or whatever the case may be. Johnny Mac, any of the other day 3 players that we didn't talk about? Kyle McCord's interesting. You think Dorian Thompson-Robinson's out the door?
Yes, I do.
I do too.
Let's see, potential practice squad. Depends, if somebody else needs a third quarterback, wants to pick him up off waivers, yeah, he's gone. If not, nobody's. Remember, when teams get to training camp, they're working with their own people. They have their own quarterback depth chart, and they have their own developmental prospects. And sometimes it's unlikely a fourth quarterback is going to be claimed off waivers for that reason. So they could potentially get him back and carry him on the practice squad. But as far as the 53, yeah, I mean, barring injury, it's going to be Jalen Hurts, Tanner McKee, and Kyle McCord.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't really think he has a chance to take over for Tanner McKee at this point either. I think Tanner's earned that job.
No, he's not going to be the backup right away. But 2026, I would be stunned if he's not the backup. Something went wrong if he's not the backup.
Right. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Tanner McKee. A lot of good grades, John. Everybody out there. I know you're not a big grader, but I do get a kick out of all the experts who prepare everybody for the NFL draft.
Well, remember, half of those grades half of those grades are based on Jihaad Campbell playing off-ball linebacker. So take it with a grain of salt. But, oh, he's a great fit. Jacoby's not going to be ready. Blah, blah. He's not going to be ready either, by the way. Most likely. We'll see.
I don't know what to make of that Jihaad Campbell thing, man, because everybody seems, I trust you. And I listen to you, and I'm like, what you're saying makes complete sense. Seems like what the Eagles want to do. It's what Howie said. But then there's just all these people out there. Jihaad Campbell's an off-ball linebacker. He's an off-ball linebacker that can rush. So.
They're not listening. Look, I did it for years. It is impossible to understand the intricacies of 32 teams. It is impossible to sit there and talk. You can't talk to 32 general managers.
Right.
They don't know his plans. They don't know his plans. And they, by the way, and this is a strictly coincidence because, we do this show every day. I talk from early in the process. I think Campbell's more of an edge rusher than he is an off-ball linebacker. That just happens to coincide with the Eagles' thought process. But most people graded him as an off-ball linebacker, same as they did with Micah Parsons back in the day. And some, not most, didn't grade Abdul Carter, but he started at Penn State as an off-ball linebacker, just like Micah. And then they gave him the option better. What do you want to do? And of course, he made the smart decision, and he's very good at it. So Abdul Carter's ends up being the third pick in the draft. How he brought up those two players specifically. Look what Penn State has done.
Right.
To your point, and you have it right. You're not taking it off all life. Everybody's Jerry Robinson. You can still say since 1979 because he didn't take it off ball linebacker in his mind. And if you want to call it weapon, because he used that term, and they've used that term in the past with Saquon, a defensive weapon, because he might play some off-ball linebacker,
right?
And that's why I bring up Van Ginkel. But he's not going to be Nakobe Dean, middle linebacker. And when it's 3rd and 13, and they have their 4 rushers on the field, one of them is going to be Jihaad Campbell, or things have gone not well over the summer.
I would say the good part about that is if he fails miserably as a pass rusher, which I don't think he's going to, I think at its very worst, you have a pretty damn good off-ball linebacker. And again, I don't think they're going to use him that way, but like if it all goes to shit in terms of the edge rushing and the Van Ginkel role, I think he is going to be.
Well, you can. I don't like that thought process. Well,
I'm looking at worst case scenario.
Well, worst case scenario, if he's shit in the Andrew Van Ginkel role, he's probably going to be shit in the other role, to be honest. But
I don't know. He was pretty damn good off-ball linebacker.
Well, I know you're an Alabama guy, but
He
Look,
was, though.
I
He
told
can
you,
fly around, John. His sideline to sideline
I don't
speed is
the flying around ain't the problem. The instincts is the problem. If you take if
right.
you take I always bring up Jack Del Rio because I'm old and everybody, well, he can't run. He's one of the best zone coverage linebackers I've ever seen in my life. He never took a false step. The next one will be the first one.
Right. Which is a big
You
thing at linebacker.
where's and then I always bring up Dontarius Thomas, who's an Auburn guy, phenomenal athlete, 4'3", smart guy, knocked out, got phenomenal grades. He was a 4.0 guy, big SAT guy, whatever it was, ACT. I don't know if it's down south, whatever it was. All I remember is everybody talking about this guy, how smart he was, and this and that. And he was book smart wise. He wasn't football smart. So he ran like the wind, and he's taking false steps off all over the place. And 4.4 at linebacker turns into 4.9 real quickly if you take one false step. Where somebody like TJ Edwards, who has those natural instincts. So when people talk about Zach Bond and all the athleticism, and it's there, but the reason Zach Bond turned into Zach Bond, and the reason Vic Fangio turned him and said, instincts, natural instincts. That's what you need a linebacker.
We'll see what
And
they end up.
there's some people, and I joked about that early. I remember saying it. I go, this is how crazy this draft was. I always talked about the range, and Walter Nolan might go 11, he might go 32, yada, that type of thing. And I brought up Campbell. I don't know if you remember. And I'm reading scouting reports, and one guy goes, he's got tremendous. One guy, and these are two people I respect. I don't want to throw him under the bus. And one guy said he's got tremendous instincts, and the other guy said he's got no instincts for the position. And I'm like, what are we doing here? What is going on? But when I watch him myself, I see edge rusher, just like I saw with Micah Parsons.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see what happens there with Jihaad Campbell. We'll be following all along here on Birds 365. I want to thank and welcome everybody for being here this morning. We got a lot of people in here. All right, so good to have all you guys in here. Wrapping up the NFL draft, 10 new picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Looks like 9 undrafted free agents as it's reported right now. We'll talk about them in a little bit on the show. John, real quick, I do want to ask you about any other teams, and I know you're following the Eagles, so it's very hard to kind of as you just mentioned, follow all 32 teams. But did any other teams stick out to you? I'll tell you one team that stuck out to me this draft, and they reside in the NFC East, and that's the New York Football Giants. I thought they had a great draft. Did any teams stick out to you that had a good draft outside of the Eagles this year?
Well, as usual, I would say Baltimore. Now there's a lot of people that are, going to put on their fake high horse and talk about Mike Green, and say, I wouldn't take that guy and blah, blah. I'm just talking purely from a football perspective.
People that might not like Mike Green, but that might be the best value pick in the entire draft.
That's what I'm saying. And again, you can be on that high horse. That's fine. I'm just talking purely from a football perspective. To get Mike Green in the second round and the best pass rusher in the draft, and people make the Justin Tucker jokes. Well, Justin Tucker's been a kicker for how long? Till he started descending and had some problems. If he keeps his nose clean and stays out of trouble, he is the best pass rusher in this draft. And they got him in the second round. So the Ravens always do typically a good job. I like the Cowboys better than, even though I think they overdrafted Tyler Booker, I like them better than the Giants for this reason. They got Ezeraku on day 2, the Cowboys. I love that pick. They got Jaden Blue on day 3,
Yeah,
a home run hitter. I think that was a good pick. With the Giants, look, Abdul Carter. First of all, the Giants should have had a good draft because they're picking so high in every round. So that's part of it. And they had a home run, but I think they got the best player in the draft. But they also took a quarterback who, I mean, come on. The only reason he's a first round quarterback is because there's no other first round quarterbacks.
Yeah, but the thing with that is they do need a quarterback. So like,
well, yeah, but so yes, they need a quarterback, and they didn't get a quarterback. As far as I'm concerned.
But remember what you talk about with these guys, John. They're fighting for their job. Like if they don't take a quarterback this year, and they have the best draft in the world, but they don't have a quarterback, both the coach and the GM are fired next year.
Well,
so
they got to do it.
That's where it's like you kind of have to give them a little bit of leeway. I mean, at least they didn't take them 3 overall.
People can do whatever they want. I don't have to give them leeway.
All right,
I mean, to me, it's a bad quarterback draft. Don't take a quarterback. And yes, and that's part of the problem. I bring it up all the time. They're GMing. Joe Sheen is GMing for his job. Brian Daboll. They're not necessarily. That's part of the problem with the NFL with bad teams. They're not necessarily, as Howie would say, being a steward for the organization, doing what's best for the organization no matter what.
Right.
And I'm not blaming them for that.
Yeah,
I'm saying that's the reality of the situation. And they need a quarterback, but this was not the draft to get a quarterback. And they took a quarterback. You're right, because they had to take a quarterback. I have no confidence that kid is going to be a starter in year one, even though, by the way, when I say that, he is going to be a starter, not a starting level quarterback in year one. Not to say he can't develop down the road, probably, right, as you mentioned, with a different GM and a different coaching staff. And then, so it was back and forth like that with the Giants. I like the Darius Alexander pick.
Yeah.
Their defensive line, we talked about it. It's great on paper. Just adds to it with Abdul Carter. And they already had a good defensive line. And then they draft like Cam Scatterbo. I mean, it's like, what you're trying to make people happy? Like, I don't like that pick.
I like Marcus Bowe or Mbo, however you pronounce his name. I think that was a good pick. 6'4", 300 plus pounds, and that dude's an athletic freak.
Yeah, he's an athlete, but he's going to be a guard. And that's one of the things, because he was, one of the Eagles' visits, and there was a lot of focus on him here. And I'm like, and I'm just talking about the Eagles, not the Giants, because I don't know what they're trying to do on their offense. I haven't known for a decade, but I know what the Eagles try to do with their offensive line, specifically at guard. And he's projected at guard at the pro level. He's not a fit for the Eagles. I said that on the show. He said he's not strong enough. They like big, strong, physical guards.
Right.
And, if the Giants want to go in a different direction and go zone blocking, old Denver Broncos style, maybe he's a fit, but their history with offensive linemen ain't great.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
good.
Carter's phenomenal. Best player in the draft. So they had a home run there. I don't like the quarterback. I like Alexander. So it was back and forth. I would say they should have had a good draft, considering where they picked everywhere.
I'm pretty sure they took Darius Alexander one pick after the Eagles took Andrew Mukuba. So the Eagles had the option. Maybe Alexander wasn't even on their board, but I had a feeling going into that pick, the Eagles were going to take Alexander. They took Mukuba, and then Alexander went. Obviously, that was the next day because that was the end of round 2. But the Giants took him the next pick later. What do you think of that? That the Eagles passed up on Alexander.
I Martin Frank had him taken there. We were having little back and forth, coffee bets. Who are the Eagles going to take in certain picks? And he was a Martin Frank pick at 64. Wouldn't have surprised me at all. But they went in a different direction. Both spots are needs. So it's were needs. Ultimately, they ended up getting Ty Robinson, so I think that softens the blow. Yeah, I mean, I just don't. I think a lot of people saw Watts and Winston and said, "Oh, well, why don't you take those?" Because people get hyped up. And by the way, you know, um, he was a high level player at a big time college. You know, Texas made the college playoff semifinal, I believe. So, I mean, what for the people who say, well, they got to take Watts or they got to take Winston because of what they did at Notre Dame and Penn State. What about what he did at Texas? And, the Eagles wanted more speed, and he's a faster than both those guys by pretty significant margin. So, I mean, for what they were looking for, he was the better fit. Now, doesn't mean he's going to be a better player. We'll see how that works out. But I do think, for whatever reason, people latch on the big names, and Watts and Winston were considered bigger names. And I don't even know why that's the case, because I pointed out, well, what's the difference between Notre Dame and Penn State and Texas?
Yeah,
well, one made the finals and but they were all, top 8 teams basically in college football last year. So why isn't he getting that deference?
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Yeah, Texas was the first year in the SEC last year too. So good stuff there. Speaking of big offensive linemen, as you were talking about with the Giants, how about the one undrafted free agent? We'll talk about the undrafted free agents now a little bit, just to give you guys the rundown on who they are. We never did a report on them. Rutgers offensive tackle Holland Pierce. He is 6'8", 340 pounds. How's that for a big boy for Jeff Stoutland University? Holy moly.
Yeah, and he's got like a 36-inch wingspan. So he's got like an NBA player wingspan.
Yeah, arm length and percentile, 99th percentile.
Yeah, that's the way. Yeah, I always look at, first of all, I think it's more difficult for the Eagles to get undrafted guys because they're so good and they don't have a lot of open jobs. So guys have smart agents. Some do, some don't. They look around the league and say, all right, this team needs this. Let me shop my guy to this team. And the Eagles don't need a lot. So I'm surprised. They got some pretty high level undrafted guys. Now, part of it maybe is just the cachet of being the Super Bowl champions. But specifically with Holland Pierce, they just drafted Miles Hinton and Cameron Williams.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who his agent is. I haven't looked it up yet. But I would have steered him in a different direction. I mean, what
playing an uphill battle?
Yeah. Now, hey, and I wrote about this at SI when I was doing the undrafted kids. I said, that said, long term, the Jeff Stoutland seal could generate him some opportunities elsewhere. So, what's going to happen is probably he's going to go through the summer, hopefully learn a lot and get cut, and maybe somebody picks him up. Maybe they don't. Maybe spend some time on the practice squad, but he faces a daunting numbers game. Daunting. I mean, they have Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, most notably. They brought in They brought Matt Pryor back. They brought Kendall Lamb, who's a veteran. They draft Miles Hinton. They draft Cameron Williams. I mean,
and 4 of them are paid big money. So there's only one spot. I mean, there's only one spot available.
I'm just saying, I would have steered the kid in a different direction, but maybe that's how valuable.
Joe brings up a good point here. Maybe he wanted to learn from Stoutland. Maybe it was a Stoutland.
I just said that. I said long term, maybe the Jeff Stoutland seal is valuable to the ultimate end game. But again, with undrafted guys, the job of the agent is to shop them to teams that need their position. And the Eagles do not need that position, to say the least. So it was just, that one was a little bit strange to me. Now, Montrell Johnson, Florida running back, so people might recognize him, got some decent speed. I think he could push Ty Davis Price for the developmental role behind Saquon and Will Shipley and A.J. Dillon and those guys.
Yeah. I like
so,
that. I like that guy. He was a physical running back in college. He was pretty good.
They signed a Toledo safety who was Quinyon Mitchell's roommate at Toledo, Maxon Hook. And they do have some
two Toledo guys. They got the linebacker and the safety. It's interesting. Interesting after Quinyon comes here from Toledo.
Yeah. Well, Nick has very close ties to the Toledo coaching staff. One of his old roommates is on the Toledo coaching staff. So he's got very close ties to that program.
To their coach, right? The Jason Candle, I think his name is, the head coach.
Yes. Yeah. Couple slot cornerbacks. You see that's an emphasis, trying to find a backup slot. They signed B.J. Mays from Texas A&M. Brandon Johnson from Oregon. They're both slot guys. And they drafted Mac McWilliams, who's going to be a slot guy. And then a couple return guys. Derek Powell, big time numbers at Central Arkansas for production people. He's got, he's really small, 5'7"ish. And then Wake Forest receiver Taylor Morin, who's more of a return guy.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got return abilities.
Yeah,
and then the other guy that's funny. He's got the funny name. The running back Derek Powell.
Yeah, he's tiny. He's tiny. But he had like massive numbers at Central Arkansas for all the 3 1,000-yard seasons. But he's 5'7". And he had 3 1,000-yard seasons, one at North Alabama. Oh, that's another thing. All these guys got multiple schools almost all of them, except for the Wake Forest kid.
Yeah, teams are going to have to get over that because that's only going to get more and more popular in the future.
Yeah, I shouldn't say everybody, but Maxon Hook stayed at Toledo. But a bunch of guys. Dixon, who was the Toledo linebacker you spoke of, played at Penn State, West Virginia, and Toledo. Mays started at Incarnate Word, which has become more famous because of Cam Ward. Alabama, Birmingham, before finishing up at Texas A&M. Guys jumping all over the place in college.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, we'll take our commercial break. We'll come back. We'll continue to analyze the NFL draft. We'll talk about what's on the agenda today for the Birds. They are set to meet with the White House today. They'll be down at the White House on the South Lawn to celebrate their Super Bowl championship. That'll go on later this afternoon at 4 p.m. Saquon Barkley, for those who missed it, was riding on Air Force One and Marine One and golfing.
Oh, my God, the humanity.
Golfing with, I get a kick. Somebody comment, the less you talk about politics. I'm like, okay, just because this dumbass can't handle mentioning Donald Trump, I'm not going to cover what the Eagles are doing. They're going to the damn White House. Shut up already. But I digress. We'll talk about that when we get back. And we'll continue to break down this NFL draft. We'll also look around the NFL as well. I want to get John's opinion on some of the other things that happened in the draft. Obviously, the Shedeur Sanders story is an interesting one. All sorts of different things happened in the draft. It is funny, John. It was like the Shedeur Sanders show all weekend long, man, with this guy. And now he's the number one pinned tweet on the NFL, on their Twitter, on their Facebook, on their Instagram. It's like, man, what is going on with that whole thing? But interesting stuff. We'll take our commercial break. 2 super chats to get to before we do it. Nick Gonzalez says, I want a John crash out like Mel did for Shedeur. Yeah, Mel was going crazy. But people, everyone's like, Mel's going to get fired. I'm like, you don't understand. That was great TV. The networks are happy about that. You might not think they are, but I know they are.
I don't know what Mel did with Shedeur, but
he was just crashing out on the set because he wasn't getting taken. So he was like, the NFL's failed to evaluate quarterbacks for 50 years. For 50 years, nobody knows what they're doing except me. It was hilarious.
Quarterback evaluation is broken. You've seen that.
Well, that's what he was saying.
I say it all the time. At the pro level, it's broken. Never mind at the college level. But I mean, I told people. I mean, NFL up to the draft, everybody I talked to wasn't as high on Shedeur Sanders as some of the draft people were. And I warned people of that. No, I didn't think he was going to fall to what
Yeah, fifth round.
144. But it didn't surprise me that he wasn't a first round pick at all. At all. To me, it came down.
You said it in the week of the draft, maybe last Wednesday or Tuesday. I'm guaranteeing 2 quarterbacks get taken, and Shedeur Sanders is not one of them. And you hit the nail on the head. It was the 2 you said, Jackson Dart, and obviously Cam Ward.
Yeah, it came down to who did the Giants like better. That's basically what it came down to. And I was pretty confident it was going to be Dart for a few reasons. But then that's the thing. Then the ball starts. Now, I didn't think it would fall to the level it did, but there's in any particular draft, and this happened to Aaron Rodgers. Like Aaron Rodgers could have been the number 1 pick in the draft, and he ultimately ended up going, I think, 21 or 22. The decision was between Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers at the number 1 pick, and they chose Alex Smith. And then he fell all the way to, and that's the difference between 1 and 20, because other teams weren't looking for quarterbacks at the time, as strange as that sounds. There's even in quarterback deficient times we live in, there's only a handful of teams looking for quarterbacks at the top of the draft. I mean, to be honest with you, I think Kyle McCord should have been a 3rd round pick from just a grading standpoint. But teams aren't looking for quarterbacks at that point. He gets pushed down the board.
I kind of like what the Steelers did, John. They waited and waited and waited. Everybody's like, what are you doing? You got Mason Rudolph. They pick up Will Howard in the 6th round. I think that's 1 6th rounder that actually has a chance to play football this year in the NFL.
No, it's not going to be good. And don't get me wrong. I mean, you have Kyle McCord and catastrophe strikes here. It's not going to be good.
Well, no, but here's what I'll say. I mean, would you rather go to the Browns and play and, they don't have a great team around you, or would you rather go to the Steelers where they prioritize their offensive line? They got good skill position players now with obviously DK Metcalf and George Pickens. They got the tight end Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. They got pieces around you, which makes your onboarding into the NFL a whole lot easier versus if you come into the league and you can't block anybody, and you're running like a madman all over the place. I think Will Howard could have a slight chance to succeed in Pittsburgh, actually.
Well, long term, possibly. I just mean immediately. Yeah, it wouldn't be pretty. All these guys, all these day 3 quarterbacks, they can all turn into Tom Brady in theory. It's not, the odds are not great, but I mean, but it takes time and development, and they're not ready right now. But I mean, that's the case. Look, you're not going to find a more gifted quarterback than Caleb Williams. You're not going to, at least for a number of years. You can go back to Andrew Luck. A lot of people called Andrew Luck the best prospect since John Elway at the time. But, of recent drafts, Caleb Williams, from a traits, physical ability standpoint, you're not going to find better. It's a fucking disaster.
People are going to hear you say that and say, what the hell are you talking about? Caleb Williams stunk last year.
Yeah, exactly. Quarterback evaluation is broken because they assume, well, you have to, because Jaden Daniels had the season he had. Why can't he do that? Or CJ Stroud, why can't he do that? Situation matters. He did not go to the best situation.
Yeah.
Now he also either did Jaden Daniels. And by the way, for anybody who doesn't watch the show, I said I would have taken Jaden Daniels first, but not because he was more talented than Caleb Williams, because I saw some of that at USC, some of the bad body language and and you got to be a leader at that position.
Yeah.
So there's holes, but I'm just saying from a physical standpoint, you're not going to find a better quarterback prospect than Caleb Williams. Now, what you do with him then determines the ultimate end game. In development, you don't just draft a great quarterback. You don't. Even Jaden Daniels, there's a lot of holes in his game that need to be worked upon. You saw some of the little pockets where he played poorly. Same thing with CJ Stroud. Had the great rookie season. All of a sudden, steps back. What happened to CJ Stroud? Well, he's probably a better quarterback last year than he was his first year. In a weird way, just from learning and understanding.
Right, he got better at actually playing the position.
Yeah, but people look at, well, the stats were worse. And that's why quarterback evaluation is broken. Unless they're all playing in the same vacuum with the same supporting cast and the same everything, then you can properly gauge where a quarterback should be. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So it's a little bit more contextual than that. But as far as physical gifts, Cam Ward certainly doesn't have Caleb Williams' physical gifts. I don't know who's going number 1 overall next year, but he's probably not going to have Caleb Williams' physical gifts. We might get to a point where somebody does again, but it's going to be a while.
Going to be Arch Manning maybe next year. One more super chat here. Kyle Studer checks in. What's up, Kyle? J-Mac, do you think there is any merit to collusion amongst NFL owners regarding not drafting Shadur Sanders until the 5th round?
No. He's, I've actually had this discussion with Jeffrey Lurie about he's incredible, going way back to the Colin Kaepernick stuff. He's like, what basically, and I'm paraphrasing, what do people think that we're on a conference call? And
yeah, right.
What? I mean, these guys, this is not Jeffrey. These guys would sell, most of them would sell their soul to win football games.
Definitely not all of them. Can't say that about all of them.
No, well, most of them would. Now, where it comes in, there's a lot of owners who don't want to put their pocketbook where they
right.
They want to win
where their mouth is.
Yeah, but they want to win. If you said, "Hey, draft Shadur Sanders, and I'm going to guarantee you 2 Super Bowl championships," everybody in this damn league would sign up. No, there's no collusion. And what they said, oh, we're going to take him in the 5th round and we're going to trade up in the 5th round. Now it's fine. Roger Goodell, I don't know what the conspiracies are. Roger Goodell calls up Cleveland. Hey, now it's fine to take him because we sent this kid a message. Some of the wild theories, conspiracy theories, nobody cares. They just didn't think he was as good a prospect as most of the draft people did. Occam's razor. I say it all the time.
They thought he was like a Will Howard and like a Kyle McCord. That's where he went. And he went
a little bit better than Will Howard and Kyle McCord.
Yeah. Good stuff there. Kyle Studer, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Don't forget to hit that like button. We'll be right back on Birds 365 to continue to break down the Eagles NFL draft. 10 new selections, 9 undrafted free agents. We talked a little bit about them and a whole lot of people coming. John, when does the rookie camp start? Should start pretty soon, right? Like at the end of the week maybe or next week?
They usually do it the second week. They have been. It's not official yet, but I assume since they're going to the White House, it might be this Friday. I doubt it. It'll probably be next the Friday after.
Got it. Good stuff there. We'll take our commercial break. Appreciate you being here. Hit that like button. We'll be right back on Birds 365.